One of our listeners has written in to say they ended up with £100,000 of debt from a 6-year veterinary degree. Once in work, they paid between £50 to £80 in student loans every month. But the interest on the loan has always been a lot higher. So 6 years after leaving university, the loan is nearing £115,000. They've written to us to say they absolutely feel paying back the loan is fair, but there's no point in increasing their repayments beyond what they pay now, as it's always swallowed up by interest. So is this change going to further put off students or even stop them from doing certain degrees that are much needed in society? You know, we need doctors, and we're constantly told that we can't have immigrant doctors come over, but we should be doing more to train our own good British, solid, salt of the earth pork sausage doctors. But
pork sausage is a new one for me.
How can you square that off? Medical degrees require more in higher education. Again, so we're looking at this as how do we deal with this? Repayments is one problem, but interest is a huge part of that, right? Is there not an argument? Is there a way that you could cap interest on student loans or at least reduce the interest payments?
I mean, one, it's about a progressive interest system that's actually tiered based on how much you're earning, et cetera, et cetera. Two, we could be more innovative with it. I mean, last year there was some modelling that we did that showed that if you did progressive interest in a certain way, then you could reintroduce maintenance grants, which means that for your poorest students who then come out of that study, because obviously your poorest students who required the most maintenance then have the most debt to pay back, right? And I mean, as you said, you've got 1.8 million students with £50,000 debt approximately, some people nearing over 200,000, depending on the amount of study that they do, et cetera, et cetera. And realistically, for most people, they're not going to be able to pay it off, you know. We have the chance to make sure that the interest is burdening the people that earn the most straight out of their study. So the people that go in and become millionaires, not that many of them, but those that do end up picking up that pieces. And then I think like the whole narrative around migration in higher education is boggling to me. I mean, you got countries in Europe like Germany, for instance, who will pay for both the tuition fee obviously and the maintenance for their students to come study abroad and to engage in that piece. And then we absolutely vilify our international students in the media here in this country, but also vilify them through policy.
Interest has always been unfair on poorer people. And it's even when you go and get a mortgage, like the more money you have up front, the less you pay in your repayments. It's all set up to ensure that those who have the most pay the least. So I'm not surprised this has kind of happened. Hearing you talk about the maintenance grants really gave me a shock from the past, because I got a maintenance grant. I was a poor kid from a council house. I went to university, and I think it's fair to say it changed my life, and I'm really glad I did it. And at a different time when it was hard, but not as hard as it is now. I guess my question to you is, and I apologise if it's still a big one, is university still a vehicle for social mobility?
And this is really interesting because I do still believe it is. I mean, likewise, raised in a council estate, single mother, etc., etc. Went to university, go us. Like we get to be
mums. Give your mum a hug from me.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But no, I do still believe that they are vehicles of social mobility. I just think that when we're talking about access, money is probably one of the biggest indicators of that piece. And if there isn't money in students' pockets while they're studying, if they're burdened with debt the whole way through, then it becomes less of that vehicle for social mobility. But I mean, I remember there was a study done that apparently one of the biggest ways for sort of advancing socially, or whatever you want to call it, was through who you know, right? Yeah. And through meeting people. And the reality is you go to university and you're probably going to meet some posh people.
Yes.
Ed Gamble.
Don't give Ed Gamble credit for your career.
This is real. Wait, which university did you go to? Durham, of course.
Of course.
The thinking man's Oxbridge.
Said only by people in Durham.
I feel very strongly like in this idea that like you learn. Your degree is about 5% of what you learn at university.
Yes.
And like without going to university, there wouldn't have been the opportunity created for me to do comedy in a completely safe environment. But yeah, who you know is a big part of it. It's supposed to be a kind of social leveler, right? Whenever people say, oh, we need fewer people at university because too many people are going to university, I always think, but who are you going to exclude from that? So that's an important part of it, right? It's not just about the degree.
I mean, you saying that 5% really resonated with me. I mean, I studied music at Birmingham and did all the freelance stuff, et cetera, et cetera. Got into student politics, ran a black student campaign. Like I would not have been here without all of the stuff that I did around my studies.
It's interesting because we all did arts degrees, basically.
Yeah.
And so, you know, a lot of these conversations we even just had now, like, oh, well, doctors, and it's quite easy to understand it when you talk about like architecture and these things that require longer training. But it should be the same for the arts as well, right? Like working class kids should be able to fulfill their artistic talents.